You ever think to yourself, man, I hate fence sitters? Well, I certainly did after watching this video about the monkey game, Black Myth Wukong. Yeah, I figured now would be the perfect time to talk about what a fence sitter is and why I sometimes hate them. But hey, this guy, Upper Echelon Gamers, he's quite big, quite respected YouTuber, so let's hear him out what he has to say.
That this game is a very solid example of quality development, which we should all want more of, resulting in widespread popularity. Basically, both sides are idiots, and we, in the level-headed center of it all, because a lot of you watching this probably fall into that category, you're just quite a bit less vocal about these things, have to endure the idiocy of people on both sides of the political aisle.
Uh-oh, guys, looks like both sides are idiots, both sides are bad. It's kind of funny because the way he worded it, he was like, we in the level-headed center, we, us with a higher moral ground. He was talking like he was trying to get his audience to agree with him, but if you look in the comments, everyone actually disagrees with him. So who's the actual idiot now? Like, you don't even understand your own audience. You don't understand the entire gaming community, which is probably why you took out the word gamers from your name. He used to be called Upper Echelon Gamers. I don't remember when he took it out. It must have been recent, but I guess he was a fraud because he doesn't understand anything, so he had to take it out. If you didn't know the term fence sitter, it basically means, so there's ground, right? And then there's a fence splitting that ground into two sides, and he's just sitting on top of the fence, flicking his boogers at everyone, and he's like, yep, both sides are bad. It's like the most negative IQ take ever because, of course, there's bad things to everything, but sometimes there's more pros that outweigh the cons. Sometimes one side has more pros, sometimes one side has more cons, etc. It's a little more nuanced, but if you actually understood what's going on with gaming and the antis, the journalists, whatever, the answer is actually not nuanced at all. It's clear as day.
But seeing what's happening right now with Black Myth Wukong and witnessing just how ridiculous the conversation has gotten for the sake of, farming views and revenue?
Yes, farming views and revenue. First of all, what revenue are you talking about? Because we all know this gaming content, this social media, YouTube, Twitter, etc., it's not paying the bills. Next of all, even if you were able to, what's wrong with that? If you're able to, all the more power to you. But what does that actually mean? Well, it means you've achieved product market fit. It means you have an audience. People are engaging with your content, liking it, giving you views, etc., giving comments. You know who doesn't have an audience? The journalists. These gaming journalists. People have been fed up. They've realized how biased they are towards one side, the left, and how they actually hate their own customers, the gaming community. A lot of the times, if you criticize someone's take on something, whether it's games, TV shows, anime, movies, anything, politics in general, they'll label you as something like a right-wing grifter. So what do they mean by that? Well, first of all, they mean to separate you. They want to put you as an enemy. Next of all, when they mean grifter, they're talking about you trying to capitalize on something for possibly monetary value or whatnot. But you know who the real grifters are? These fence sitters themselves. Because what they do is they have the most lukewarm takes. They never take a firm enough stance on one opinion. So they're like, oh, yep, both sides are bad. So that way they never alienate any of their audience. They basically want to grow their audience as big as possible. And whether they inadvertently or not, grow their money as much as possible. So they're actually the real grifters. Someone like me, even though what I'm saying is pretty, I'm not saying anything radical. I'm just saying it's just the truth. If you take a stance on something, you're bound to alienate more people, right? So who's the real grifters? In fact, a lot of the people popular on social media would fall into this category. So people like Mudahar to people like Charlie /Penguin Zero /Voice Critical, they have these popular channels, and of course they have these popular takes. So it's not really much of a surprise. Not to say their content is necessarily bad. There's a lot of reasons you could watch. It's not just because you want to hear their takes. Maybe you just want to stay up to date, or you want to just hear them talk because you find them funny for some reason. So Upper Echelon Gamers goes over both sides in his video. First, he starts with what I consider the bad side.
Let's start with the media. Pretty much all of this tracks back to one original article from IGN, where a writer named Rebecca Valentine talked about sexism in the offices of Game Science, which are the developers of the game, and used poorly translated quotes, which kind of didn't really support or demonstrate the narrative she was trying to spin.
So right off the bat, he acknowledges that the people who started it first was the media, the games journalists, which to many, including myself, you've already lost the battle. You've already lost the war at that point because you're a games journalist. You're paid to do this job, yet you've mistranslated something from another country's dev team, essentially slandering them. There's basically no more argument needed, but I guess he doesn't consider this con strong enough. I guess he has to, he has to criticize both sides still. Here's a hot take. I don't even understand why these journalists are talking about something in China with a foreign dev team. Just let the Chinese journalists handle that. And then if they find something illegal, China will take care of it. The CCP, they'll send them to Ba Sing Se or whatever.
One side began claiming that the game was a beacon of anti-woke success.
It is a beacon of anti-woke success. I don't know why he said that in a mocking tone, because what people want is a game that's free of these current day political talking points, mostly from the left. And that to us is anti-woke. These moral centrists like to misconstrue words like woke and anti-woke, or at least pretend to. Throughout the video, he never says what he thinks it means, but the only explanation is that his thinking is completely wrong. He must think that the anti-woke is the far right or something. He probably thinks an anti-woke game is about Confederate America, when all we want is to be free of agenda pushing.
While the other basically just complained about how the game was doing well, and complained about the fact that it did so well without emphasizing Western political token diversity. Here's an example of that, just so people don't think that I'm making it all up, from Dot Esports. Quote, Black Myth Wukong's shameless lack of diversity is attracting the wrong type of fans. Further down, diversity isn't a bad thing, and we shouldn't be afraid of it. Half the people on the planet are women. Around 10% of humans identify as LGBT+, according to a 2021 survey. We live in a diverse world, and there's no escaping it. Having a diverse cast of characters makes games more believable. It helps female and minority players feel represented.
Assuming the 10% LGBTQ statistic is true, what's the end game? Like, are we just going to apply that number to all the characters in video games and media, and as long as they've hit the 10%, then, well, we're sufficiently diverse enough. We've satisfied the quota. But they won't ever admit that there's any type of quota, because if you admit there's a quota, then there is an end game, and they don't want the game to ever end. Okay, another hot take. Now, this is going to sound cold, but I don't care about the dev team at all. At the end of the day, we only care about the final product, the game, if it's fun or not. Like, it could just be robots making this for all I care. But if you try to change what I'm thinking, like, instead of them being robots, you try to humanize them and you talk about, oh, look how diverse they are, look how many XYZ genders, female-led development team, etc. And if that turns out to be bad, the final product, then over time, if I start to see a pattern, you can't blame people for having prejudice over time. But likewise, the opposite could happen. If those games end up being good over time, we might associate certain teams with good things. We might have good expectations of them for the future. It's strange to me how certain industries care more about how something is made, like the back end of it and the process, whereas some industries you don't really care. For instance, my t-shirt, it's polyester or cotton. Maybe I care, but then the cotton, where did it come from? Was it made in America, made in China, made in Japan, made in Indonesia? I don't care. The cotton itself, was it picked by a white guy, a black guy, $1 a month paid Cambodian? Psh. These minute details, less and less people actually care about them. It's just the truth.
While common statistics now often point to the fact that half of all gamers are women, if you break that down by genre, according to much more comprehensive data from Quantic Foundry, that is only true when talking about specifically Match 3 family/farming simulators, casual puzzles, or atmospheric exploration games, aka Candy Crush Farmville and The Sims.
Representation will never make sense. They'll look at these studies saying 50% of women play games, but then find out that they're all mobile games. But because it doesn't fit their agenda, they might push another narrative saying that, oh, it's because the AAA games don't have enough representation, which is why women are not going to those games. You see how the goalpost can just constantly move because they never actually have a goal in mind. And that's the point. That's by design because they don't want to tell you their goal. While I'm at it, I just want to say that all these studies are usually misrepresented in a way to push some type of agenda. For example, there might be some research saying that more diversity equals more revenue. And then after reading that, the CEOs and executives will be like, oh my God, guys, we need to hire more minorities. But the truth is that these studies, they never normalize for anything. So if you've taken a basic science class, you know what I mean by like variables and constants. For example, they might be like, oh, look at these high diversity, high revenue companies. And then they'll look at like tech companies like Google, Microsoft, Apple, and be like, oh, look, Apple, their CEO is gay. And like all those other companies, like half the programmers are Indian, and then the HR department is just filled with LGBT people, LGBTQ freaking autumn. That's a tongue twister. LGBTQ. Dude, that is, whoever designed that acronym needs to get. Then they'll be like, oh, look at Tractor Supply Company. It's less diverse than those companies, and it makes less money. So therefore, more diversity equals more money. It's the same argument for things like gender pay gap. Like, what are women studying in school? Is it like more liberal arts stuff? You know, the intersection of African American history and literature. I don't know. I just made that up. And then what jobs are they getting? And then at the job offer, are they negotiating for a higher pay? During their job, are they pushing for more promotions? There's so many variables that they never account for. So all these studies are just straight bull. Just like these studies, these centrists play dumb about this whole both sides bad thing. Let's hear what he has to say about the other bad side.
The two examples for today are Grums, this guy, and Endymion TV, this guy. There's more out there. These are just two that happen to cross my personal social media feed, but here's the type of content I'm talking about. Quote by Grums. Cope and seething begins. Wukong is a gorgeous game that gets 9 out of 10 scores by reviewers. You're just mad because it thumbs its nose at feminism and DEI, end quote. Or this podcast, where he was a guest, quote, Black Myth Wukong destroys the woke. Gaming journalists continue to lie, end quote. Switching over to Endymion, woke journalists demand Black Myth Wukong's success stop, plus IGN backlash erupts as feminists panic. Or even better, Black Myth Wukong has a higher player count in 4 hours than the last 9 woke games combined. Based gaming wins again, end quote. Yeah, this is the problem.
Yeah, this is the problem. How is this a problem? They're saying the truth. It's just a player count, aka statistics. Do you have a problem with statistics? You probably just have a problem with his wording. Like the word woke makes you feel like, oh, they're on the other side that I disagree with. A lot of times YouTube titles are over-exaggerated, but they're still true. So I went back to the video where he mentioned about gaming journalists continue to lie. And it's about how gaming journalists are either lying on purpose or playing dumb because games like Wukong actually did feature female characters. And they talk about how journalists play dumb about the failure of Concord. You know, they coped about it being a glitch. So I don't see anything wrong. Speaking about playing dumb, in that tweet with Grums, Mighty Keith, which I don't like, is doing exactly that, playing dumb on purpose. Notice how he puts the word side in quotes and talks about the ideological war with God knows who. If he's not playing dumb, he's just actually negative IQ. What do you mean God knows who? It's pretty obvious there's a clear side that the journalists are on. You must be living in an echo chamber or just under a rock if you don't see the obvious left-leaning media bias.
For starters, over 92% of all reviews for the game on Steam are in simplified Chinese.
Yeah, I'm not sure why he's bringing up these statistics. I mean, I think I know why. He wants to say, oh, the game isn't doing well because it's anti-woke, which we already mentioned how he misrepresents that or is playing dumb on purpose. He's saying, oh, the game is doing well because it's Chinese, which is true. But also, even if it's doing well, it's selling over 10 million by now. If even just 10% of those are outside of China, that's over 1 million and counting. We're just getting started. So the game is going to be selling millions outside of China.
And now they're holding up a game that was primed for success in every conceivable way, with an audience that simply could not care any less about Western culture war topics.
He thinks they don't even know about these Western cultural war things, when in reality, that's how out of touch he is, because a lot of people, they've actually forsaken Western media in general and just have looked at Eastern things like anime. Like, if you're anything like me, you probably watch things like Gochiusa or Nanan Biori or Hidamari, and maybe you possibly play gacha games. So those people, they know what I'm talking about. But people like Upper Echelon, he's not in that category. He thinks this is just some Western cultural stuff, but in reality, it's pretty obvious that in the East they don't think like this. They don't have that woke mind virus. In Japanese, they even call this pori kori. It basically means political correctness, and I'm seeing it right now. In Chinese, they have a word for it called bai zuo, which means literally left, white left. It's a derogatory for Western liberals and leftists. In Singapore, I was watching this video recently. The prime minister himself calls out wokeness. Literally the word wokeness.
In the West, they got a movement called wokeness, where you are super sensitive about other people's issues, and you become hypersensitive when other people somehow or other say things or mention things or refer to you without the respect which you or your super subgroup feel you are entitled to. It leads to very extreme attitudes and social norms, particularly in some academic institutions, universities. You talk about safe spaces, you talk about appropriate pronouns, you talk about how I'm about to say something which may be offensive to you.
A lot of countries are aware of Western woke liberals. It's basically the laughing stock. Anyways, his video sucks and I've been recording for way too long, so let's just hear him out one last time in the conclusion.
But the right, big air quotes there as well, is doing a victory lap over something being successful when it doesn't even show or support the bullshit they're peddling. If you think Black Myth Wukong is a rallying cry for the anti-woke gaming movement, or if you support the game because it's sticking it to those invasive DEI consulting companies, you're an idiot. It's okay, just to be clear, you're allowed to be an idiot, but you should be supporting this game because it's a good game.
Sticking it up to the anti-DEI consultants. And it's okay to be an idiot. Unfortunately, it's okay to be an idiot because the world is filled with left curves and these enlightened centrist moralists like this guy here. Of course people want to play a fun game, but you know what's even better? A side serving, a side dish of copium from these woke journalists and DEI companies. So it is sticking it up to them because it's not about politics, it's about the lack of it, especially considering the clear bias in the leftist media. You can see it with how you see them cope over games like Dustbin, Dustborn, and Concord, some of the wokest games of all time. And then you see this reaction from Wukong. It's hilarious. And if you don't see this and understand, then you are blind. And if you're not blind, then you should see a subscribe button. Hit that. Like always, it's me over. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And until next time, I got like 10 videos making simultaneously.